chairman, Ambassador Joseph Folakwe, also known as Oloforo, by suspected gunmen at his residence in Aramoko, Ekiti. During their monthly meeting in Ado-Ekiti, the drivers described the attack as uncalled for and inhumane, noting that Falokwe had maintained peace since assuming leadership of the union. They expressed surprise over what could have warranted the attempt on his life. On his own, NURT chairman in Ekiti State, Chief Falokwe, called on security agents to apprehend the perpetrators and provide adequate security for him and his family. He also urged political aspirants to maintain peace while contesting against Governor Oladoyin Ayegbusi in the forthcoming election, emphasizing that no Ekiti indigenes' blood should be shed before, during, and after the governorship polls. And outside Nigeria, but still in Africa, President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa has launched a G20 expert task force to examine global wealth inequality and its effect on growth, poverty, and multilateralism, the first initiative of its kind for the G20. Ramaphosa said in a statement that the six-member task force, chaired by Nobel Economic Prize laureate Joseph Stiglitz, is expected to present its findings on G20 leaders due to convene in Johannesburg in November. South Africa has sought to use its G20 presidency this year to highlight issues affecting poorer nations, including rising inequality and sovereign debt burdens. He said people globally were aware of how inequality undermined dignity and the chance for a better future, citing unfair vaccine distribution during the COVID-19 pandemic as an example. And away from Africa, the United States suspended tariff exemptions for small delivery packages valued at $800 or less, ending a loophole that allowed more than 1 billion packages to enter the U.S. last year without custom duties. The loophole is due to end today in the U.S., followed by a 6-month transition period to a new tariff regime. More than 30 countries, including Australia, Germany, Japan, and Mexico, have suspended or partially suspended package shipment to the U.S. in advance of the cost change. Portal unions around the world say more clarity is needed about how the tariff will be calculated before they resume shipment to the United States. The White House has named a replacement for the director of the U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, a day after its previous leader was forced out of the job. Jim O'Neill currently serves as the deputy to Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and will replace Susan Monares after she was in the role for just a month. Lawyers representing Dr. Monares said her sacking was illegal and alleged she was targeted by Kennedy because she refused to rubber stamp unscientific, reckless directives. In an interview yesterday, Kennedy said that the CDC leadership needs to execute Trump's agenda, adding that the CDC is in trouble, needs to be fixed.
The CDC is an agency that is very troubled for a very long time, and anybody who lived through the COVID pandemic and saw all of these bizarre recommendations that were not science-based.
Robert Kennedy Jr., Secretary, Department of Health and Human Services, speaking there. Then investigators assert that the attackers who opened fire on pupils as they were praying at a church in Minneapolis was obsessed with the idea of killing children, according to the police chief, Brian O'Hara. Robin Westham, who killed 2 children and injured 18 others, did not seem to have any specific motives.
What we have seen so far is this is an individual who, unfortunately, like so many other mass shooters that we have seen in this country too often and around the world, had some deranged fascination with previous mass shootings and very disturbing writings that demonstrate hatred towards many different individuals and different groups of people. And he fantasized about the plans of other mass shooters.
While speaking to journalists, Fletcher's father described Westman as a coward who decided to murder his 8-year-old son.
Yesterday, a coward decided to take our 8-year-old son Fletcher away from us. Because of their actions, we will never be allowed to hold him, talk to him, play with him, and watch him grow into the wonderful young man he was on the path to becoming.
The murdered children have been identified by families as Fletcher Makel, 8, and Hapa Muyoske, 10. "33 Colombian soldiers have been released after being held captives for 3 days in a remote Amazonian village dominated by armed rebel factions and drug crops. The country's, according to the country's Ombudsman Office, Idris Imran, the head of the Ombudsman Office, in a post on X yesterday, said that troops were escorted out of the rural communities in Guavera province. The soldiers had been detained on Monday after clashes with an armed group killed at least 10 people. Officials from the government said that the United Nations led negotiations that secured the soldiers' release, and authorities initially reported 34 troops were detained, but later revised the figure to 33. You're also listening to news to Global Box, I beg your pardon, on Adamimogo 107.7 FM. Idoikiti. Coming up next, China seeks stronger ties with Brazil to resist bullying on world stage. Please join us again.
Hello, good people of Ekiti State and its environment. For your private, political, family, or club meetings, and so on, of not more than 50 to 100 participants, we introduce to you Adamimogo Event Hall. Yes! Right at Oladoyin Palace, Adamimogo 107.7 FM's compound, Ido Ekiti. Ample parking space, good security, clean environment. You also have the opportunity to book for a media publicity of your event on our fast-growing social media platforms. All these for a talking. Simply visit us at Oladoyin Palace, Ido Ekiti, or call the following numbers for more inquiries: 0803 526 5812 or 0916 340 0878 or 0806 511 4430. You can also call 0806 380 8891. Adamimogo Event Hall. We are waiting for your patronage.
Many thanks for joining us again. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook via Adamimogo 107.7 FM Idoikiti. For happenings around your news and queries, please contact our newsroom on 0915 786 8095. Now to the rest of the news. Chinese Foreign Minister Yang Yi has told his Brazilian counterpart Mauro Vieira that China is willing to strengthen coordination with Brazil to resist unilateralism and bullying. Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs said today that Wang made the pledge to Vieira in a phone call as the government of Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva considers retaliatory trade measures against the United States over President Donald Trump's imposition of 50% tariffs on a range of Brazilian goods, noting that the current international situation is undergoing complex changes. Wang also pledged China's willingness to join hands with the BRICS trading bloc to protect the legitimate rights and interests of developing countries. BRICS, which include emerging economies such as Brazil, is a China-led political and economic grouping that is seen as a counter to the Western-led APEC and G7 group. South Korea's prosecutor in separate cases have indicted former President Han Duck-soo for aiding and abetting former President Yoon Suk-yeol's short-lived imposition of martial law last year, and the ex-president's wife Kim Kyung-hee for bribery and other charges, according to the South Korea's media. The charges were laid against Han, aged 76 today. Additional charges include perjury and falsifying official document. Former First Lady Kim was also indicted on charges stemming from the alleged participation in a stock manipulation scheme and acceptance of gifts from the controversial Unification Church, among other activities. The head of European Union's Executive Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, has spoke of her outrage at Russia's deadliest onslaught on Kyiv since July, which also damaged the EU's delegation office in the Ukrainian capital. Ukrainian officials reported that at least 23 people, including 4 children, were killed and dozens more wounded in the bombardment. All but one of the dead were in a 5-story residential building that was destroyed. In a strongly worded statement, von der Leyen said Russian missiles struck close to the EU office. 2 missiles hit in a distance of 165 feet of the delegation within 20 seconds. And finally on sports this afternoon, former world number 1 Naomi Osaka has described Jelena's comment about Taylor Townsend as one of the worst things one could say to a black tennis player. Recall that Latvia's argued that Townsend, after the American beat her 7-5, 6-1 in the US Open second round on Wednesday, saying she has no class and no education. Japan's 4-time major champion Osaka believed that the statement is one of the worst things one could say to a black tennis player in a majority white sport with respect to black history in America. In America, all of this she stated in a post on social media. And with that sports story, we end this edition of Global Box on Adamimogo 107.7 FM. Ido Ekiti. Just before we go, the highlight again. We told you that here in Nigeria, the National Executive Council meeting, Council NEC, has approved the Nigerian Medium-Term National Development Plan 2026 to 2030, otherwise known as Renewed Hope Economic Development Plan. We also told you that the United States has suspended tariff exemption for small delivery packages valued at $800 or less, ending a loophole that allowed more than 1 billion packages to enter the US last year without custom duties. Finally, we reported that Chinese Foreign Minister Yang Yi has told his Brazilian counterpart, Mauro Vieira, that China is willing to strengthen coordination with Brazil to resist unilateralism and bullying. And that's Global Box this afternoon on Adamimogo 107.7 FM, Olajudo's Palace, Ido Ekiti. On behalf of the production crew led by Folawu